Okay, and I think we're live.
So should I go ahead?
Yes, if you could just give a brief intro.
Sure.
Uh,
Okay, so I'm seeing your screen kind of with Cello Bello administration kind of black background, and then I'm seeing, okay,
yeah,
there. Great.
great.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Cello Chat. I know it's been going on consistently for months now, and during this pandemic situation, and I'm so happy to be participating today. So my name is Yeesun Kim, and I am the cellist in the Borromeo String Quartet, and I also teach at the New England Conservatory. My quartet is the quartet in residence. Can't remember since which year, but long while now at the New England Conservatory, where I also studied and got my master's degree there. And then my quartet also did a artist diploma program there. So I've been there as a student and as a faculty member now, and it's been my one of my most treasured community. And so now, so Will Saw is here to help me out with just fielding the questions and stuff, and he and I will probably just start off the chat with some conversations, and we're hoping that people will join in with their comments or questions or anything you have in mind, and I will try my best to try to answer you. Okay. So, Will, are you still there?
Yes,
So, so would you be reading off these? I see a couple of questions, or
sure. Would you like me to read about?
yeah, I
Some?
think that might
Sure.
be better,
Great. Okay. So
so
the first,
everybody can hear it too if
sure.
they're not reading.
The first question is: teaching is an integral part of a musician's career. How did you begin and develop your pedagogical skills, and how have they evolved over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I how I started teaching was that I mean, these days I think performing musicians are expected to multitask quite a bit, and so of course, I mean, I started off playing concerts with my quartet, and we actually started playing concerts a lot of concerts within our second year of forming the group. So, I mean, it was actually very stressful because we actually didn't have that many pieces that we actually knew. So, we were practically practicing all day long and then go play concerts. And, we used to play concert like once every 3 days, I think. And it just didn't stop for a long time that way. And of course, we had to learn things very, very fast. And part of what is asked in a lot of these kind of concert series is that you're asked to do outreach program, which involves, I mean, oftentimes it involves a small scale concerts, for people of younger age group. We would visit their schools and play a small mini concert with a small introduction to each movement we're playing and such as that. But then there's usually the other part where you have to you're asked to give master classes either for on the cello or for chamber music. So it was very natural way in which it was became very much part of teaching became very much part of what I understood as what being a professional musician is. And I mean, it happened so gradually and naturally, which I'm very grateful for. I mean, I never set out to think that, oh, I'm going to be a teacher. That wasn't my sort of main goal at the time. But I know from fact that I can say now that from teaching I have also learned a huge amount of about myself, about my playing, and also from students. You actually learn a lot, because I mean, in the end, we're all sort of struggling with similar kind of issues. And of course, everyone is in a different place of development, maybe on different subject matter. But we're all looking for something very similar in terms of what we all consider to be wonderful music making and wonderful art making. And I have to say, teaching has become so important in a sense that when you're teaching, you are actually really forced to think about what you're doing. Because if you, let's say there are some things that I just could kind of do without having ever asked serious questions. And then, you are working with someone and they seem to be having trouble in that area. You have to quickly think about why would there be an issue? How do we address it so that you can make it better? Or vice versa, like things that I might have had trouble figuring out when I was studying certain piece, and then somebody comes in and they just play that part with absolutely no difficulty. And oh yes, I can give you a very specific example, which is uppo staccato, which I've never I never could do. And then through teaching, I actually figured out what is actually involved in doing that mechanism, but it took a long time to figure it out. And there was a lot of trial and error, definitely, in terms of sorting that out. And so there are just so many things, and things like stage fright. I mean, I used to have a lot of stage fright, and of course, just performing itself takes care of a lot of that. But also, when you're working with students, they're having the same issue. So how do you talk to them about that issue? And everybody's maybe fear comes from a different place, and so it becomes something very, very personal. And you really have to get to know the person very deeply. So it is an amazing, I guess, journey. And I don't know that there is a clear sense of, well, pedagogically this is what I'm following, because I just actually feel that that's a little bit, at least for me, a little bit stifling. I need to feel that there is always other possibilities of solving the same problems, and that everybody has their own entry point of how, because in the end, it's each individual who has to solve the problem. It's not so much what your teacher tells you. They're just planting a little bit of seeds in your mind, and give you obviously a specific suggestion of how you might address the issue, but that's not exactly the only way of solving the problem, in my opinion. So I tend to just try to, I mean, if I don't like to sort of repeat same thing over and over again. If it doesn't go through in the way that I explained 2 weeks ago, then I have to find a different way of sort of explaining myself, or giving different imageries, analogies. And so that's a little bit my approach. It's it has a clear goal, but how one gets there is really much more fluid and flexible. I
Great.
hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. There are some comments, from Jay, good afternoon. Gabriel, greetings from Montreal. So much looking forward to this. And there's another question would be, because this is obviously audition season, and as you are a faculty at MEC, um, could you please outline the process of preparation or practicing the contemporary music selection in an audition, and also how important is this contemporary music in one's total audition process?
Yeah. Okay. So it's always a little bit well, it's kind of silly to divide up things into those periods, isn't it? But we have to give everything name, obviously, otherwise it's a little difficult. But in terms of choosing the pieces, I think especially because like certain older pieces, like say Beethoven or whatever, Brahms, whether I think oftentimes because they've been around and they've been proven to be fantastic pieces, I think oftentimes the students just sort of take it without actually investigating uh, themselves what is great about it. So now if you apply that to the contemporary music, okay, so maybe we're talking about contemporary music, modern music that was written, say, last year, and the composer is not a well-known person, say, and you're asked to play certain piece of music. So how do you, I mean, the person not well known, what I mean is that there isn't a huge amount of music that you can kind of study as you're learning that particular piece. So the question is, how do you go about making it sound good? And I think the issue there is that basically, in my opinion, as a performer, sure, I have my likes and dislikes like everyone else, but my job is to make the whichever music is put in front of me and make it sound as good as it can and as successful as it can be, because I don't think any composer sits down and writes a piece of music that they don't expect it to be communicative and successful when it's being played. So I consider my job as a performer, my primary job as a performer, to be just be humble about it, don't make too many judgments about it, and you just have to get into the score and get to know the language of that composer and get to know the language of the specific piece. And you have to bring out the best of what is in that piece of music that you can offer. And so, how important is it? Well, I mean, I think for us to, know the music that is being written now at this time, obviously it's sort of like, if you don't know that, then it's sort of like not reading, I guess, news. There are things happening around us all the time, and if we're not aware of that, I mean, one doesn't have to be aware of it, I suppose, but I think we will feel that we're sort of missing out on what's happening. And again, I guess time will tell, history will tell if that particular composer at that composition should live a long life or a short life. But I again, I don't particularly myself consider that it is my job to judge that. And so I think it's very important, and to obviously I think it's easier if a person who's playing the music has some kind of attraction toward the piece that they are playing. But at the same time, if one is open-minded enough, I think that one will always find something likable in any piece of music that we're playing. And that's what you have to stay with, and that's what needs to be delved into, and hang on to it and use that as a starting point and allow it to evolve into something that you feel like, yes, I can speak for this piece. And I mean, maybe one doesn't have to commit to playing it 20 times, but even if it's once or twice, it'll you I think one learns a lot by that process. So I actually love learning pieces that I have no idea about, because it's just absolutely fascinating. It's there is nothing that I can refer to. I mean, there aren't like 100 recordings of it that I can just listen to. So you have to kind of do it yourself. You have to study. You have to figure out the structure of the music. You have to try to get into the inside of the music and try to create something outward direction. So I I guess I'm basically saying it's absolutely necessary part of I think one's musicianship to play contemporary music or whatever music of our time, yeah, which constantly changes. I mean, everyone's music was music of their time at one point, so I think it should be a given that we would be curious about it and keep studying and find resources to perform these pieces. Not everybody wants to hear it either, but I do again think that we do have a responsibility as a performers to just at least play, you know, some of the program is so that there's always a little bit more newer composition that hasn't been played for the past 300 years.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Amanda. She asks, are there any concepts or ways of describing cello technique which you think are incorrect or misleading? If so, what are they and what do you advocate instead?
Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure if I can directly answer that question, but from my own playing experience and teaching experience, one thing I can say is that I myself also have gone through a period where I was sort of playing through, I guess you can simply say playing through pain. Because of the all sorts of variety of tension problems that existed in my body as I was playing. And I'm realizing that maybe that is the biggest problem behind or underneath anyone's technical issues. And what I just said is very sort of vague and large thing, but what I try to concentrate on, so certainly when I'm practicing or playing, is I need to be able to spotlight where the tension is located as I am playing, and I need to be able to find a way to release that. And as soon as I am able to, in real time, while I'm playing, not playing a passage and then feeling like, oh, that didn't go well because I was so tense, that's also okay, but it's sort of a little bit filtered. Whereas while I'm playing, if I'm able to locate the tension and able to release, locate exactly where the tension is building and release it in real time, you can correct the problem as you're practicing. And it is such a different sensation and positive one that I think once one gets in the process of playing that way, you can't go back on that. Yeah. So oftentimes I think incorrect way of doing things is that oftentimes the students I think get again a little bit confined by a certain way of like holding bow or a certain way of putting their hands in the set up in the left hand, and then they're kind of locked in that world. And the flexibility or actually, maybe more importantly, listening to your own body's need, because everyone's made a little bit differently. So, like, sure, there is this, I mean, there are many different ways of like holding a bow too, from different schools of playing. And honestly, I find that I need to be able to. I mean, whether I'm aware of what school of bow hold I'm using, you be able to name that or not is not that important. But when you're playing different repertoire, you will, I think, feel the need to adjust your bow hold or hand position in order to make the right sound, the sound that is more appropriate to that particular musical style. So I find myself actually changing fair amount without actually, and I'm not trying to tell myself, well, this is I'm playing a cello part in Mozart string quartet, so I'm just gonna have a different way of holding my. That's not exactly what I'm telling myself, but I realize as I'm playing, with my group and hearing the sound and listening to the music and the language of the music, you realize, okay, this is gonna have to adjust in order to find the right character of sound. So I think it's always good to be able to be flexible physically, first of all, and find these different way of developing technique of how to handle the instrument depending on the music one is playing. And again, it's not that neatly divided into, classical period, romantic period, 20th century, and contemporary. Obviously, it's not that simple. But I mean, even within, one composition or between two phrases, you'll find that being able to adjust your technique sort of accordingly will really help be much more in contact with the musical content that is in the score. So, yes, for me, just not being able to be flexible is the maybe the biggest problem of sort of root of sort of not great technique.
Great, thank you. There's a question from Gabriel. He asks, how would you approach the situation of having a student who wants to be a professional musician, who has enormous passion, but has come to serious studies of the cello and music too late to make a career as a player a realistic option?
Hi, Gabriel. Okay, thanks for the question. So, I mean, this is the difficult question that I think if one is teaching, at one point, one will always, I guess, run into this kind of situations. Um, I don't know. This is just my approach, and I know other, and maybe I will also change my thought about it if when 10 years from now, if we have this conversation, maybe I'll have a different answer. But for the time being, again, I feel a little bit like my job is to share what I know about how to do this, which is playing cello well and making music sound beautiful. My job as a teacher is to be helping whoever wants to do that as well as they can do. And I I'm not sure that the deciding to become a professional musician is not really entirely up to the talent alone. Um, and also, I mean, some very, very enormously talented people who's gone through the best conservatories and got best education. Some of those people also quit for whatever reason in the middle. And vice versa, I think people who are absolutely passionate about music and playing cello, I think people need to be encouraged, and they will come to their own conclusions about if it's appropriate for them to pursue it as a professional musician. Because I mean, professional musician, I think we to be a professional musician, we have to be a reliable a professional performer anyway. We have to be reliable to be able to uh, play at a high level. So whatever that means to each individual, and if someone is willing to give everything they've got whenever they started, it's sort of not my it's not up to me to tell them no, you can't do that. uh, Maybe they will come to that own conclusion 5 years into studying, but I don't think those 5 years have been wasted if they actually put in absolutely their best and learned as much as they could. But by doing so, I think they will have only gained absolutely highest level of craftsmanship and musicianship, and they will also forever love music, and even if they don't do it as a professional. And so I don't know. I mean, I right now, I mean, if someone were to, I calls for it, and let them live that journey. And I think that's the only thing I would do for anyone. And I mean, if I'm not sort of being able to help the person because of my and the person should look for a different teacher, or but if they are willing to work and really want to do music, they means study.
Great. There's a question from Alonso asking, do you consider that IT or tech would have to be included in curriculums now?
Well, short answer is yes. And I think that part of it is probably much easier for the younger generation of people than, I mean, I'm including myself I'm kind of in the middle aged group, but I know I struggle. I mean, I do what I need to do, but it's not that instinctively easy for me to be doing. Doing IT stuff. But again, I think there is a huge amount of potential that can be used well. And I'm actually very curious and excited to see where it's all going to go. Because I mean, think about like when they sort of things like electronic music first came out, there was a lot of pushback, like, well, that's not real music. It's a machine that's making music. But when electronic music is done really well and subtly, it can actually create a sound world that is completely magical. It's different medium, obviously, from acoustical instruments playing concerts, but it is in its own right. I think it has a enormous power, and not to mention that it's very relevant to the time. Again, someone was asking about the relevance thing with the contemporary playing contemporary music. This is the electronics is how we live. So we can't like we can't like separate what we do from that and live in this cave and just invite a few of our best friends to come and enjoy it. I mean, that's fine too. That there's something very intimate and um, lovely about that, obviously. But I think there is again huge amount of potential and possibility with this kind of direction things are going inevitably. you know, I mean, I'm very limited, but I'm uh, mm, happy to embrace that challenge and see where we can go with that.
Great. There's a next question from Yeesun Kim. He asks, when someone auditions for a music school, what do the judges tend to look for? Yes, with sound quality, how well they can play.
Okay, for a music school. Okay, so yes, I mean, we're looking at listening to a person's general level of where they are compared to their peer group, obviously. But I think, again, I think we're more interested in finding out about what each student feel that they represent, and they're being able to communicate not just wonderful cello playing, but something about strength of character is very important. We're looking again for more potential than end result at the school auditions anyway, because we are trying to see if that person can develop into their highest potential while they're studying at the school. So, being able to, and as everybody in this chat knows, it takes so much hard work to be a great player. And a lot of that has to be done by each individual. I mean, obviously, professors and all the teachers and all the concerts, all those things are there to help you along. But in the end, it's just really you, or each one of us, answering ourselves and not being feeling like, oh boy, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the most important thing I find attractive in students is that sense of strength of character and ability to be independent in their thinking. I mean, those students tend to be actually harder to teach, but I find that it's very rewarding to be working with someone who has a strong idea inside. It's really wonderful to be part of that process as a teacher, and it's very exciting actually because there's a lot of give and take. It's not sort of spoon feeding, right? um, and so I think, at least for me, those kind of applicants seem very attractive to be working with for the next 4 years or 2 years, or how many ever years the program may be. And so, I mean, it has to be something completely genuine and sincere, obviously, but it's definitely not just about how correctly one plays cello. That much I think I can say.
Thank you. We have a question from Dora. She asks, hello, what can we do to play faster? For example, I guess she's talking about the faster part of Pezzo Capricioso. Is it normal to take more time to attain a faster tempo?
Is it normal to take more time to take more time? Oh, I think the question is it okay? Does it take longer to be able to play faster passage? I think might be the question. Okay, you know, they say fast music is a slow music played in a faster tempo. Uh, what that means is that if one approaches fast passage work with a feeling like, okay, this has to sound like some kind of machine that is just like uh, just going on its own, I don't think that's actually going to create great result in the end. Um, one might be able to practice it that way so that it gets a, some kind of very sort of steady, fast motoric playing. But it's not the best idea to do that because it will feel, to put it simply, it'll just feel quite unmusical to play that way. So I think obviously one has to do a lot of slower, little bit slower practicing for fast passages. And yeah, I guess it'll take some time to get it up to a tempo that you might want, but you have to do it incrementally. So use a guideline of, use the metronome. That's okay to have a click, right? Know that any single given beat, so 4 notes, so for something like a pezzo, every beat is going to have 4/16 notes in. And if that is the case, one has to be immediately try to make a shaping of those 4 note groups so that it is a gesture rather than 4 even notes. And the more you can think of it in those terms, it becomes very fluid motion, and it's a circular and more horizontal motion rather than vertical motion. I mean, in this case, what's difficult is to coordinate the separate stroke with the left hand. But even for a passage like that, I might consider actually practicing it with slurred bowing, so that your left hand feels very, very fluid instead of sort of vertical. And that would give natural shape that you can follow a passage. And just keep trying to think even more sort of musically with phrasing, gesture shapes when you're practicing faster music. And then if you just and speed up gradually, you'll reach a point where you're playing fast, but it's not sort of breathless kind of playing. So I think having internal shape in passages of fast speed is actually the actual key for being able to play something fast without getting nervous about it.
Thank you. We have another question from Daniel Lim asking any advice or suggestions on executing a successful rehearsal with a chamber ensemble when preparing for a concert or recording, given that there may not be as many rehearsals or as much time as you would like.
Okay, Daniel, nice to see you on the chat box. Okay, so this is one of those, probably every group is a little bit different, but how to practice, rehearse efficiently. Lately, I know, like, for instance, Daniel probably knows because Daniel used to study with me, but our group tends to use the full score of the pieces that we're playing. So I'm never looking at my part alone. And that speeds up learning process so fast. And the key is, again, to be using the score in real time while you're playing, not studying it, going to before going to, that's fine too, obviously, rehearsal, or play a passage without the full score and then look at the score and try to deduce from what you heard, because those are kind of filtered. Yeah? It's not a direct way of getting to the score that you see with all the all the information that should be there while that passage is being played. And this way, it's like a direct resource and direct information on what needs to happen. So even if it wasn't perfect when you played it, you'll gain so much information looking at the score and hearing the sound around you and seeing what it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to be sounding, without relying on how it was played, including yourself. Obviously, playing is a very physical enterprise. So I think we do get sometimes a little bit reliant on how something physically feel, and we're not really truly looking maybe how what the score or the content of the score is asking for in relationship to other sounds that's around. So as soon as you get the score while you're playing, even if you're practicing your own part, I mean, if the score is there, if you parts, your eyes are going to wander. To look at, I wonder what's going on. I mean, it's not even you're trying to be scholarly about it and have to study the score. It's actually not like that at all. Like noticing peripherally what's you're going about doing your carrying on with your business. And I think it's a sort of natural way of sort of introducing as much information as possible, sort of natural way. It's all there, and it's up to you to notice it or not notice it. And I mean, even to this day, even with the piece I have played many times, when we go back and play it again for for another set of concerts, say a few months later of the same piece, I'm looking at the score, I'm playing my part and hearing the sounds, and there are many that I still discover as a new, and it's again just so exciting. It's as if you're finding new thing every time you look at every time you play the music. And the greater the composer is, the amount of detail that's in there is it's a lot. They're asking a lot of performers to be able to see, feel, and execute. And so I do think that there is no shortage of learning in depth the music that we're playing every time we play it, if we use. So that's been one of the quickest ways to rehearse, at least from my experience. And when you have, let's say it's not a piece that you're familiar with, and if you have the score and let's say something goes sort of wonky, you're seeing what's happening, and you will be able to sort of make a decision as one of the players in the group to just kind of shall we say reset what's happening. And that's also kind of useful because you can actually figure out what went amiss, and in the real time, again, while you're playing, you can make very quick decisions about how to save the situation, let's say. And so I would encourage of any pieces, especially if you're, is one of the best ways to
Okay, let's see. We've had a bit of a connection issue, so it was cut off. If you could just repeat what you said in the past like 20 seconds, that'd be great.
Oh, ooh, dear. Yeah, I think um, just I was suggesting that if you have very limited rehearsal times, I would definitely try using the score as much as possible. But the thing is, the entire group, every single person has to use the score, not just few people in the group, because otherwise it doesn't really work. This exercise. But as long as everyone is comfortable using the score and being able to catch quickly, I mean, one does have to get a little bit used to playing from the score. Obviously, the print will be a little bit on the smaller side, and also, it's busy. There's a lot of visual information, and being prepared with your own part as much as possible obviously is very helpful. Although having said that, I mean, especially if you're playing like second violin part or even cello part to a certain degree, but second violin and viola part in a string quartet, sometimes depending on the repertoire, sometimes unless you hear what's supposed to be happening first, it's difficult to even start practicing it, because the parts themselves are quite simple, but it's how they fit in to the inside the harmony, inside the texture of what's going on, that makes it very different. So, well, I actually had one more suggestion with the limited time. I think playing it through many times, even if it's not every phrase is perfectly lined up, is also very important, because it has to be in the ears of everybody's ears, and so that they have a trajectory of what they're aiming for, more or less, not in a big picture, not just getting bogged down on small details. So go back and forth, but first just read it like you're doing chamber music sight reading party or something. So read it a couple of times without interrupting, so that you get the gist of the overall feeling of what the piece is about, its characteristics or its emotional content, or even to know like how does it feel to like play this piece physically, like is it 20 minutes of a heavy physical playing, or is it 20 minutes of a very quiet music. I mean, all of that matters in terms of carrying expressing, communicating the music to actually succeed. So one has to feel it in one's body to know, like, okay, to play this piece from beginning to the end of the note, this is basically what I can expect. So
Thank
I
you.
would try that.
There's a question from Elizabeth asking, could you discuss the process of developing your personal sound and sound character? Every great musician has a sound that is identifiable, and you know exactly who it is, who is playing without seeing them, whether it's Daniel Shafran or Rostropovich. How do we work on this and now become truer versions of our teachers or idols?
Yeah. So it would be great to ask one of those people for that opinion, I think. I doubt that they set out to, you know, it's, I think it's just that their particular, it's their musical personality that is coming through. I don't think they are literally setting out to have a, well, this is my musical voice, this is what I'm going to sound like when I play. Um, it's just the accumulation of what they perceive as their sort of own voice, and hopefully I think I know what she means by being able to identify someone's sound when you hear it. But at the same time, maybe that shouldn't be the biggest thing that draws our attention. That should be, in my opinion, the secondary thing that we should be appreciating. Like if you're playing Schubert and then you're playing Dvorak concerto, it I would hope that one would approach it with the sense that music is requiring a completely different kind of personality or character in the sound that we're playing, and that obviously my own sound, my own personality is very much part of that equation. But I think it's kind of important that Schubert sounded like Schubert and Dvorak sounded like Dvorak. So, well, I guess there's a different types of acting method also, something to do with this kind of approach, where some actors think that they should become part of whatever the storyline they're supposed to be telling, so they get consumed into that character that they're playing. They're not them. They're not. They don't have identity. In fact, they break down their own personality so that when you're watching that person act, you think that that person is representing exactly that character in that story, and that alone has no other outside or extra kind of presence. And then there's different kind of acting where basically the person who's acting is becomes a bigger entity than the character that they're playing. So the story is being told through that individual who's carrying out that act. So I think it's just matter of choice, really. And it is a, I think, decision as a artist to figure out what is the what is more truer version of what you would like to do. What speaks more true to you, and then you have to decide what to develop, which direction you're taking. Yeah. And probably my guess is truth is somewhere in the middle there, where you have to have, of course, very strong unique voice of your own, but always with the kind of approach that it is to basically allow the music, every piece of music that you're applying, to come through in its most pure form.
Great, thank you. There's a question from OB Composer, I think. He asked, how do
What
I
is a
go?
OB composer?
That's just the YouTube name that he's
Oh,
chosen.
okay.
Yeah, but I think he or she's asking, how do I go about notating glisses as an expression on the A string rather than actual typical slidey glisses? For example, the intervals and the swan, and using the slides as a form of expression.
Yeah, okay. So, right. Actually, that's a kind of so I think this person is a composer herself, so I'm going to answer it this way. I've always felt that it must be really frustrating to try to write as a composer with so little option, so few options. Meaning, you know, when we have an interval, basically, I think we're thinking of it in terms of it's something like a swan. Obviously, it's literally singable, yes, and a lot of the music that we play is based on the singing quality of music, and we're, in a sense, we're trying to actually just imitate that. So to play an interval in a lyrical music without any kind of connecting gesture would be unnatural, because we would not sing it that way. So when you're not marking anything on the music, I think it should be uh, understood for the performers to think that that's just normal vocal way of connecting the tones. So it doesn't have to have a huge amount of obviously glissando that is obstructive. If it's obstructive to the expression, it shouldn't be there. And there are ways that we can connect sound that is not entirely um, relying upon left hand motion. And um, so that should be actually a given thing for the performers to understand that it's when you have especially big intervals, but even half tones. So sometimes depending on harmonic content of what's happening, there could be the slightest should I pitch that connects it beautifully, that's quite appropriately expressive. So I think actually when one does write glissando and mark it in the score, it should be actually that it is something beyond that normal range of vocal way of connecting the tones. So like if I saw actually a marking glissando, probably what I would do is I'll try to spend as maximum amount of time in it during the glissando itself, rather than trying to concentrate on the either ends of the departing note and the ending note, and try to connect it as naturally vocal as possible. I would be spending a lot more. So I might actually start making the motion of glissando earlier, or as soon as I start the pitch, I might start the glissando. So I'm maximizing that gesture. And so I think you have to trust that players will, when you don't write actually glissando, they will do what is naturally singing, and then hope that it will be the case. But in my opinion, that's how it should be.
Thank you. Glay asks, hello and thank you for your time. What kind of advice can you give us to be calm during any performance?
Yeah, right. So getting nervous for performances is well, first of all, expecting that I think helps a little bit. I mean, when we expect something to happen, we are, our mind is already in preparation. That doesn't mean that I'm getting nervous, not at all. But I think if you expect it, you will know it's coming, first of all. And then you can have few strategies about that, which is that we actually need that extra sort of adrenaline running for the performances, because it's very special thing. It's not just doing house chore or even practicing. You're in front of people, and it's everyone's looking at you and listening to you with 100% their attention, and you've worked really super hard for that, and it's a lot of pressure, right? So I think it's normal to feel that. If you can find a way to turn that into an excited energy rather than fear, maybe that's going to help you in the end, rather than being destructive. Oftentimes, I think nervous energy, once it starts setting in, we actually, unfortunately, we kind of let it take us over in a way, to a level where it's distracting us, and it becomes the ruling thing, sentiment, while we're trying to do what we're trying to do. So you have to like accept that, okay, you're here. You're nervous. This thing called nervousness is here. I'm going to, you can just stay here. Don't go away because I'm going to use you as a positive energy. But I'm going to use you as a positive energy. You're not going to use me as negative outlet. Yeah. And just sort of be not constructive. Yeah. So just accept it and then try to leave it at bay on the side and really try to focus on the music you're going to play. How just run the music through in your mind so that you're not concentrating on the fact that you're nervous. And I mean, it's funny because I mean, most of the times, if you have practiced it in a concentrated manner while you're preparing a piece of music, then that act of concentration into the music should be kind of automatic. It's something you have to be able to turn on. But this comes with actually doing a very, very systematical way in the practice room many, many, many months leading up to the concert. Because oftentimes I think we don't really concentrate that hard when we're practicing because it's practicing and you can do it many, many times over. So we actually give ourselves too much flexibility in terms of like, instead of thinking, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it. And I think it's also important to remind ourselves all the time that music is something that happens once and we cannot recreate it. No matter how fantastic it was, there's no way to recreate it. So this is probably why, we make recordings, because you can recreate it once it's captured. You just need to play one time really well for the recording session. But in order to get that one time, you do like 20, 30 takes of the same thing, right? But reversely, in the practice room, when you're playing something, instead of expecting, oh, okay, I'll probably have to do this like 100 times in order to get it right. What if you tell yourself, I'm going to do it right very first time? And the reality is probably it won't happen in the first time. But I think approaching it with that kind of determination and concentration and focus will help greatly in terms of reducing number of sort of mindless hours of practicing cello, and also in the situation where you're under pressure and the nervousness is kind of taking you over. And if you have practiced it this way, you know what it feels like to concentrate so hard on the thing that you're doing that there is actually no room for distraction. And I mean, this is something that, I have to learn. I am learning still, I think, from a lot of experience. And I realize, yeah, I do spend a lot of time, sometimes a little bit in a wasted way. I'm not really connecting what I'm doing with what I'm hearing and thinking about it, analyzing in a most not correct, but most direct way. There's always like, oh yeah, it's little bit I'm a little bit not right here, so I'm concentrating on one thing, and then if you do that, then something else goes off, and you get very confused as to it's not, you can't fix things one at a time. It's a whole thing. It's a whole package, right? So it's difficult, but I think learning to fully concentrate is a something that we all should probably try to strive forward toward.
Thank you. We have another question from Peter.
Oh, hi, Peter.
He asks, do you have a process for or any advice about finding new repertoire to work on, especially modern music? For me, I usually decide to play a new rep if I hear someone else play it and like how it sounds. But how did they come across that piece? Is there a more reliable way to search for works?
Yeah. Well, my approach is honestly similar to yours. I mean, now it's much easier because there's so much you can get from YouTube, I guess, right? And there's no shortage of performances that you can listen to. Um, but oftentimes I find it also helpful to just talk to people, especially if they're really interested and connected to that circle of musicians. And of course the living composers are sort of best way to go about that. I mean, obviously they have their friends, their enemies, or whatever. I mean, people, we all do, and they have their likes and dislikes. But oftentimes, when I speak to living composers and ask them about certain things, you can right away tell what it is that in their opinion, as a fellow composer, what they admire about certain other composers. I usually try to go by composers and not so much by pieces. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if I, because the chances are also, if there's a composer who you really really like that you weren't aware, composer who has for a cello, you can find a way to commission the piece, commission a piece from the person because you like their music. So it's just sort of like getting to know a lot of people, but in musical terms. And so exposure of and again, I mean, I think talking to other composers is the most direct way to find out this information, maybe more than players, because I mean, we tend to be drawn toward like the pieces that are written for our instruments a lot of the times. So that already little bit limits the selection naturally. um, there's plenty of I think pieces one can play with that approach too. But I think if you want to go even further, just make composer friends and talk to them about what about other composers, and they'll be able to help you along, I think. But that's a great question.
I think that marks the end of the questions. If you can give any closing remarks, that would be great.
Oh, well, I'm not sure if I have particularly a closing remark, but I do. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. Uh, I hope to see everyone soon. I mean, some of you I know, and thanks for tuning in. And I hope that everyone is able to stay motivated. Yeah, and I mean, right now it's just a lot of difficult things going on in the world. But I went through this period during these past few months where I felt very unmotivated, and I and then reversed, and up and down like that. And I tried to think about, well, is this really only because of pandemic and I'm not playing concerts? And when I actually thought about that question, the answer came back as, no, actually this happens when I have full schedule playing concerts too. It's actually just natural part of a cycle. Right now we can't control certain elements of what we are having to deal with, so it feels as if but I think sort of a natural thing where we cannot be. It's hard to stay motivated all the time, and but that the sense of motivation and inspiration we have to work on to try to um, uh, have with us. It's not something that just kind of wanders in, wanders out. So those times when I'm not motivated, obviously maybe there was some reason for it or whatever, but I think it is a situation that we can have self control about, as a lot of you probably are doing right now. You're probably all learning a lot of sort of solo repertoire. Great. Those tend to be harder to play. So go for it. And even if you decide never to perform them when the concerts live come back to us, you'll have learned this enormous amount of music and practicing and self-discovery. So this is what we do is very solidary. So yeah, and we should be used to this in a sense, and solitary. That's what I meant to say. And just keep up your spirit and go find ways to inspire yourselves. That has to be done from within, not from outside. And I do believe we'll all come out much stronger people after all this is over, and we'll be hopefully much more purposeful about what we do, and all this sort of kind of empty times we've had, it'll have given us time to reflect and think about a lot of things in life that we may have taken for granted. And certainly I feel that way. And so as much as I would like this time to be done and over with, at the same time I do think that we can all make it so that we can utilize at this time productively and meaningful way. So good luck to all of us, and thank you for tuning in.